have to say I am blessed with glorious purpose, because I am here to bring out the god of mischief, the god of stories, Loki himself, the one and only Tom Hiddleston.
Thank you so much. Believe it or not, that's not something I hear every Sunday afternoon. I'm very grateful to you. You all look fantastic.
There are worse ways to end a con.
Yeah.
This is wonderful.
Really amazing. Thank you so much. What an honor to be here and to be here with all of you.
I want to kick it off. I want to go way back.
Okay.
You've now been playing Loki Laufeyson for 15 years, which means you've got over a decade of con experience of this wonderful culture, this life.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite elements of this particular community? We were talking about it in the back. What makes this special to you?
Honestly, it's sharing the joy. That's what I love about it. This weekend I have received so much generosity and so much passion for the work that I've done and the ideas that we've shared, and believe me, I feel the love. So thank you. I should say this, is that I think we use fiction. You and I were chatting back there. Fictional characters in fictional stories, comic books, ancient narrative, superhero stories, to explain ourselves to ourselves. It's all a metaphor. It's all a way of exploring who we really are in our real lives. And we have done it forever as human beings, just like they used to do in the ancient epics. And the thing that moves me the most is that it's been my honor and my privilege to play Loki and to represent whatever he represents on that canvas, and to hear and witness how much he means to so many of you for so many different reasons. And it creates an extraordinary, I feel, atmosphere of connection and togetherness. Is that actually we're telling these stories to understand who we are. And so I'm grateful to you. Thanks.
So before there was ever a con, before any of that, I want to go back to a headline from 20 years ago. This headline read, or almost 20 years ago now, Marvel rolls dice, cast no names for Thor. That iconic headline now. And I gotta bring it up because you represent one of my favorite castings in the last 20 years. Like I love that's the direction they went. And in my opinion, Sarah Haley Finn is one of the names at Marvel, like the casting director who puts it all together. She's the one above all in so many ways. What's unique about the Marvel casting process that allows them to build those relationships over decades that literally has to be a plug and play for so many different mediums, so many different universes, so many different relationships? What's the Marvel casting magic?
First of all, I'm grateful to the writer for his endorsement and encouragement. But yeah, even more grateful to Sarah Haley Finn and Randy Hiller, actually, who both cast me in the first Thor movie. And an extraordinary gift of their confidence in me and in Chris Hemsworth. Neither of us had done anything up to that point which could prove that we could deliver on that promise. I hope that we could be presented ourselves as people who were willing to work hard and were grateful for the opportunity. But it is amazing how they have populated this universe, you know, the constellations with disparate and versatile talent. And the magic always with acting is what happens between you. And I always feel if I've done any acting that's half decent, it's because of the actor I'm opposite. It's the that's the joy of the unpredictability of the chemistry that you have. And yes, my hats off to Sarah for populating the MCU with these amazing actors who are able to create in the spaces between them these relationships which become more meaningful as time goes on.
It's such a precious seed you have to plant, and hope turns into the trees that become the forest that becomes, it's incredible. And I love that, you know, that Marvel did make that risky, I guess, at the time, gamble. Is there anything you remember from the casting process that now is interesting as Loki's evolved? Like a take, a choice, a decision you made about Loki then that's so different now?
Funnily enough, in many respects, the center of the character, the soul of the character feels the same. And from that day to this, the thing I wanted to honor most was the complexity and depth and size of his soul. That Loki is an ancient character who is mischievous and playful and unpredictable and sometimes chaotic, sometimes vulnerable, sometimes destructive, often contradictory, but that the soul of this character is deep, and I wanted his soulfulness to be evident from the get-go. Now, as the stories have changed and the movies have changed, and my requirement in each story is different. In the Avengers, the point of view isn't from Loki's perspective, the point of view is from the Avengers' perspective. But it's interesting, some people have asked me this weekend, do you prefer playing the villain or the hero? And my response is, it's the same character. It's the story that changes who the hero is. He's still this deeply complex and contradictory character, as are we all.
That actually brings me to our next question, because the god of mischief.
Thank you.
So, on paper, Loki isn't as translatable from an outside perspective, but once you're in him, absolutely, he's that connection, he's that eye line. So what do you think it is that you wanted to, in the beginning, before it had as much screen time as it had now, wanted to be that anchor, that eye line, that connection to the everyday person that's seeing their humanity reflected in someone that in his first iterations felt very antagonistic? How did you want to anchor someone to be like, I'm rooting for him, I know I shouldn't quite be?
I think that it's the primary emotion that's at the center of him. And I felt very fortunate in the first Thor film that I was given by the late, great Don Payne, the screenwriter, an extraordinary arc where very early on you got to see how lost and confused and vulnerable this character was, so that his grievance was always rooted in grief. His rage was always rooted in vulnerability. And so even when Loki's at his most destructive and his most villainous, I suppose, I had a second to present what was behind all of his anger, what was behind all of his misguided and destructive kind of element, which I think the audience could latch onto and go, okay, he's making some interesting choices.
Decisions were made.
He's not thinking clearly. And also, I think it is in his nature. I think he is the whole point of the trickster in any mythology is that the trickster is a mercurial force, a shapeshifter, a transformer, a disruptor, a boundary crosser. As soon as you think you could pin him down, he's shifted away into something else. And even, I mean, Chris Hemsworth and I used to talk about evolving their choreographic fighting style as that Thor was like a block of granite and Loki was like the wind dancing around him, but together they could be very powerful. But at least in the characterization I had a moment to reveal that at the center of this detached, the mask of detachment and coolness and mischief was actually a very lost and broken soul looking for meaning, which I think is something I've managed to continue all the way up to the end of Loki season 2.
I definitely think so. I felt that connection throughout. Absolutely. So very recently, it was lovely to see you get to flex the Shakespeare muscles in 1602. I loved hearing that. One, was any of that improv? Because I know you've got it at the ready. And two, I love that Kenneth Branagh, to me, is like our Laurence Olivier. He's our representative of the Bard. And I gotta know, what was it like on set with two Shakespeare guys while making something like Thor? Did you guys wax poetic, literally?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was part of Ken's pitch for the part, for the role of directing the film. From memory, Thor was not an easy, as a movie, it's quite an interesting movie to pitch. And Marvel, I think, were thinking carefully about, you've got gods and monsters and this shining citadel in the sky of Asgard and a rainbow bridge and, 8-legged horses and I think Kenneth Branagh very clearly came in, spoke to Kevin Feige and said, I see what this is. This is like the best of Shakespeare's history plays. It's like Henry IV. Thor is Prince Hal, and he has to go on a journey from arrogance to humility in order to become Henry V. And Odin is like King Lear, or King Henry IV. And Loki is a bit like Iago or Edmund in Lear, actually, the illegitimate son, the one who's cast aside, which is also true of Loki. So I think Kevin Feige and the great producing team at Marvel thought, what a great take on this story, that this celestial space opera, I suppose, that Ken was going to root it in something very grounded, a dynastic drama. We're interested in royal families, always. We're interested in what happens behind the closed doors in royal families, because if they disagree, it matters. And this royal family have a lot of, so it was sort of like that, really. And I remember looking at Anthony Hopkins and thinking, he looks just like, I said, have you ever played King Lear? And he said, no. And now he has.
Now he has.
Yeah. I'm not taking credit for the idea. It was always in the cards.
Sir Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah.
Now, you are so versatile in your work, but there's a through line that I personally love in one of the channels. There's this poetry in your work, like Jarmusch, when you worked with him. I love the poetry in that film. It literally feels like a poem come to life in Only Lovers. And then with Del Toro's Crimson Peak, it felt like the sensory of the ink was part. Yeah! I'd love to hear that. To me, Jarmusch felt like a poem, and to me, Del Toro felt like the ink was part of the frame that we saw through to get to the story. And then with Woody Allen, Midnight in Paris felt like a love song, and it felt like a love poem. It felt like this poetry. And I wonder, is there a certain sensibility you look for in a script, or do you think your mechanism is just attuned for that kind of poetry?
That's such an interesting way to put it. You're probably right. I mean, I love poetry, and my appreciation for it has grown as I've got older. The abstract, the abstract form of the arrangement of words, which then the individual can subjectively interpret according to his or her own experience of being alive. I think they are very poetic directors. And I love making all those films. Jim, certainly. The thing that was most poetic about that was he'd taken something that's quite popular in cinema, the idea of vampires and literature, I suppose, and used it to explore the idea of mortality and death. By which I mean, if you take two vampires who by their very nature don't die, you are considering, because of course we do, and any meditation on death also brings about a reflection on life and how we make life mean something and how we make our short time on this planet worth it. And really that's what that film is about. And that great line that Tilda Swinton has, which is, life is about surviving things, appreciating nature, nurturing kindness and friendships, and dancing.
Yeah. It's such a beautiful feel of a film.
Yeah. And she's trying to help Adam, you know, my character, she's trying to help him out of his depression. It's a beautiful conception of the film. And then Guillermo is really making a similar, well, similar in some senses, but it was his tribute, or his finally his version of a Gothic romance, which is his favorite form of literature, where the story is actually investigating some really primary engines in our lives, and the battle between love and fear, and all of our choices essentially boil down between those two forces. You either make a choice out of love or you make a choice out of fear. And Mia Wasikowska's character, Edith Cushing, is light and love, and she is kind of banishing the shadow of fear in everything that she sees, and in my character, in Thomas Sharp. And I think Lucille Sharp, played by Jessica Chastain, is a kind of emblem of fear and how fear can corrode the soul in some way. Yeah, I love making that film. It does have a very unique strain of sincerity, which is very unique to Guillermo. Yeah, which I appreciate. Yeah.
I like that it feels like the smell of a book.
Yes. Yes. He would love that. Yeah, yeah.
That's how I always, when I think of that film, I'm like, this is like a nice book.
Yeah, he would love that.
Now, you've officially got my favorite arc in the MCU, and speaking of that poetry, there's something so profound to me about the God of Stories concept recontextualized through the cursed with glorious purpose ideal that I love was planted so many years ago and just like cast and got to germinate and become this tree. And I've wondered ever since, has that recontextualization of the concept of the God of Stories through that line changed how you felt about that line when you delivered it as a different Loki all those years ago?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it was a great line. Even then, I loved saying it.
I had to say on the way out.
It's so grand and theatrical. And in that moment, he's I think he's covering. He's improvising.
Yeah.
He can back it up. Well, at least he tries.
Until Hulk shows up, it's a whole thing.
Hulk and the Avengers, that pesky team.
They keep showing up.
Yeah. Yes, the most exciting thing, I remember when I was, I cast my mind back to a couple of years ago now, almost exactly, and I was in Los Angeles with the great team who make Loki, Kevin Wright, our producer, Kasra Farahani, our production designer, Eric Martin, the head writer, and some other brilliant producers and writers who are part of the writers' room. And we had a board, and at the top of the board, we had a big sign that just said "Glorious Purpose?" ? Because I kept insisting, I think, episode 1 of season 1. Loki discovers that the glorious purpose that he felt was a part of his mission and a part of the center of his capacity to derive meaning from his life was fraudulent. a lost cause with no foundation. It leads to nothing. It leads to the suffering of his friends and his own death. And Mobius gives him this second chance, and it's this journey through the TVA and trying to understand himself, meeting Sylvie and going on a journey with her, meeting the other Loki variants, and then finally getting to the Citadel at the end of time and thinking, how do I reinvigorate, redefine, rediscover this sense of purpose? How could I derive meaning from my life? And it's such a great engine for a character, just driving forward and making sure he doesn't waste it again. But then it also became a great question for every character. What's glorious purpose for Mobius? What's glorious purpose for Sylvie? How does she find purpose after she's done what she came to do and execute He Who Remains? What's glorious purpose for B-15, who finds out she had a life on the timeline? What's glorious purpose for the TVA? Suddenly all these people at the TVA, they think they've been working for this institution that claims to govern the order of time, and actually they find out that there is more moral ambiguity in their actions. And can this broken institution be repurposed for something better? Yeah. Which is a debate we have in the world all the time. Can broken institutions be reorganized without being swept away? So glorious purpose became this true north for the compass of the show. And of course for Loki and his desperation to make it mean something in the face of so much confusion and so much loss, and the stakes are really high. Yeah. You know, these the multiverse, you know, people are trying to destroy people's lives. So, and it led to these amazing conversations about the whole nature of purpose, which I think is very resonant in all of our lives. And I kind of believe that that's what we're all searching for. We want a purpose in our lives. And it led to some great discussions Kevin Wright and I used to have. We had a whiteboard and we wrote the great Socrates quote, "The unexamined life is not worth living."
Perfect parallel. Yeah.
And you know, we started reading Viktor Frankl and Man's Search for Meaning, and his idea of that freedom and responsibility actually go hand in hand. You can't have freedom without responsibility, and you can't have responsibility without freedom. And I started quoting T.S. Eliot and everything else. But it was it felt like a fantastic and fruitful place to start, especially as in season 1 we've been talking about free will and predeterminism and all these kind of quite philosophical ideas, which it felt like I couldn't believe they let us get away with it. You know?
We were talking back there, I think art is more of a feeling than a thing you think through. And I think glorious purpose is something we all feel more than we think about feeling. So I love the idea that glorious purpose became a narrative we could attach ourselves to feel the art more directly. And that's why I think that arc is so profound over the years, because every time we feel it in a different medium, it's a different feeling that we can't pin down. And that brings me to another question.
So just to your point, I think when we in our lives feel lost, we feel like, what's my purpose? And I think Loki has represented that.
And we look for it in art, which comes back to the Ouroboros of this all.
I see what you did there.
I loved when that character was named. I was like, this is going to be I'm going to go on this journey for a while. Now, I've known Justin and Aaron in real life for years. I love those guys dearly. They're delightful, and they mentioned a few things when I told them I was going to be sitting down with you. A current passion for tennis, Mr. Dave from The Endless, and Heat. And I want to know, 1, why Heat right now? And 2, what are you enjoying in art that you want to share with others that would be something that you'd recommend for someone looking for glorious purpose? Like, is there any art that's been really driving you lately?
That's a good question. Interesting enough, over the holidays I started reading Heat 2.
Yes, I'm so excited.
Which is great. Also, you just mentioned Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. Season 2 wouldn't be what it is without those guys. They are fantastic.
That guy's swim. Love those guys.
And they really are. Their instinct for story is so good, and they came into the creative process. And the one thing they used to keep saying is, we want to excavate and unfold and get into the vulnerability of every character. That was what they were interested in, was each character's most vulnerable spot, which is a great instinct. And it's true, I do love tennis. I constantly used to sort of, whenever there was a good scene, Owen Wilson also loves tennis. So I would sometimes, if we felt like we got a good take, I was like, it feels like Federer and Nadal.
It is a very actor sport to love. Like a back and forth where you're both competing.
Back and forth, it's the rally. The magic is in the rally. And it was so funny because I would come back and be like, do you remember that? I would sometimes talk about matches that I remember, which go on for 5 hours, and it goes to a fifth set, and you see these close-ups of these amazing tennis players' faces, and it looks like they've been through something. It's incredibly profound, but they've still got the fire. And I would sometimes go, that's what Loki should look like. And Justin there would look at me like, we haven't seen, we don't know what you're talking about. What, Roger who? And so it really tickled me that they didn't, so we sometimes would, get up these old matches on YouTube. Anyway, tennis is life.
I love that even in that environment, sports were like comic sports, what's happening, you're showing us this reference.
Wait, Loki's a tennis player?
A tennis face for Loki, how do we direct that? What do you mean? Is that a metaphor? Now, I have roughly 82 questions. I won't have time for me to ask all of them.
Though, because sometimes you're on set and it's like first thing in the day and you're fresh. You're all fresh, but the character's not fresh.
Yeah.
The character's been doing this for centuries.
Yeah.
The character hasn't had a shower in weeks. Sure. The character's really stressed. And sometimes you do see that in great tennis players at the end of matches. You're like, wow. This is drama.
There's also the butterfly effect in tennis, where like a turned ankle or a pivot or like the exhaustion is like an acting scene where you need that wear down. So it's a great metaphor, but they should watch more tennis. So those are my questions, but I do know we have some questions fans have asked you. So we've actually got a video, and we're gonna get into that in just a second. So if we cue up that video.
Hello. Which one of us are you?
Hi, my name is Elise and I'm from Florida, and my favorite variant is Kid Loki. I relate to him because even though he is young, he is still incredibly clever and tough.
Hey everybody, so my variant that I feel like I relate to the most, other than Loki, is Sylvie. I don't know, she's so badass and just really cool. Ever since the beginning, I've just had a connection with her, and I love her so much with my heart, other again than Loki, because Loki is awesome. All Lokis are awesome, but Sylvie is badass awesome.
Hi, my name is Riley. I'm from Tampa, Florida, and the Loki variant I would relate to the most would be Sylvie because of her determination and her passion, and I also love how she can escape stress through music or appreciate certain aesthetics of places like the record store, which we saw in season 2. She always has that sacred place she can refer back to, and for me that sacred place has been Marvel and Loki. So thank you, Sylvie, and thank you, Loki.
Hey, I'm Harper. I'm from North Carolina, and the Loki variant that I identify with the most is Thor Ragnarok Loki, because he's still kind of suspicious of people and like not really trusting, but he ultimately wants to do good and wants to be helpful.
I'm Lauren. I'm Mila, and we're from Port St. Lucie, Florida. If I was a Loki variant, I would be Alligator Loki. I'm a Florida local, so of course I love basking in the sun and jumping in the water. I'm usually calm, but if you do me wrong, I might bite your head off.
I think I might be TVA Loki because even though I'm mischievous and I like to play tricks, I'm still trying to find my way in life, and eventually I want to find my glorious purpose.
Hi, Tom Hiddleston. My name is Kellen Wilkinson, and I'm from Lewis, Delaware. My favorite variant of the Garbage Loki show was the political Loki, because he actually reminded me of the actual Loki from the movies. I think you're awesome.
Hi, this is Marie from St. Cloud, Florida, and this is my cat, Thomas. And the variant that I would most relate to is the sacred timeline Loki, who stole the Tesseract. And my second favorite would be alligator Loki, because he likes to spend his time in the pool like I do.
Hi there, my name is Maya. I'm from Seattle, Washington. The Loki variant I relate to most is Tom Hiddleston's portrayal of Loki, especially throughout the movies and the TV show. As someone who has always felt burdened with glorious purpose, he is my favorite. I also love that Loki is the adopted son. As an adoptee myself, it's not a background that I often see in characters, and I've come to really respect Tom Hiddleston for the way he portrayed Loki being adopted.
Hello, I am Julia. I am from Settler, Florida. My favorite variant is TVA Loki. He's the one I can relate to the most, especially the part where he reflects on his life, sees the things he has done, and he has to find a way to cope and deal with these traumas that has happened. And I like that he tries to make himself a better person. I think that's very inspirational for anyone leaving here, especially me. He changed my life. Thank you. I love you.
Hey, how's it going? My name's Kyle, coming live from Fort Myers, Florida. Thanks for coming down here. Huge question for you. After the amazing season ending of Loki, and you ascended to your well-deserved throne, where do you see yourself in the MCU going forward now that you have transcended to the God of Stories? Thank you very much. We'll see you at the live show.
A lot of love for alligator Loki. Quite rightly. By the way, I haven't been to Florida for a long time. And this weekend I've been obsessed on the way to the convention center every morning. Every body of water I go we drive past. I'm like, is there an alligator in there?
Today's the day, maybe today's the day.
I just really want to see one. Yeah, I mean, I want to see one, but I also maybe don't.
Like alligator Loki, there's a certain...
Yeah.
So a lot of people asked what Loki variant you would want to be, but I've always seen it as like kind of on the day. Like it's the multiversal concept of change equals.
Yeah.
So today, what variant do you feel most Loki?
The one that I play.
Question answered. Yeah. Take it.
Yeah. I think I love the guy. Played him for 15 years.
There's a connection.
Yeah, we've been through a lot.
So I've got a bunch of questions, and I think you guys are largely here in this audience if all went well. So we've got one from all the way from North Vernon, Indiana, a Haley Moncrief, who asked, we saw Loki as a villain throughout most of his Marvel movies, but he has quite a different personality in the TV series. What do you think changed him so much and why?
I think it's the I think it's the I tried to think of it as if I wasn't Loki, because of course it's fascinating that it is Loki, but what happens, I guess, in the wake of Thor and in the wake of Avengers, he's still caught up in this defensiveness, and he gets, in Avengers he does terrible things. He tries to take over the city of New York and brings in an alien army. But he eventually is hauled up in front of Odin, and he's still really defensive, and I think he's lost, and he's still trying to pivot and spin out and find a way through, find a way to manipulate the situation to his advantage. Of course, he does that on quite a big scale by pretending to be dead. But he, essentially, at the beginning of season 1, he's confronted with the facts of his life, and they don't add up to much, or they don't add up to what he thought they were going to add up to. And that is so shocking. And I thought, well, what if it wasn't Loki? What if it was any of us? What if it was me? And you were pulled into a sort of sterile interrogation room between being born and being alive or being dead. And they were presented with your life and it didn't add up to much. It would be so shocking. They say the definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. He has to change. He has to. Otherwise, he's bananas.
Which is only so fun to play so long.
Yeah, I mean, he is quite bananas. But I think that's probably the moment, is realizing that there were these people that Loki has always had this huge hidden heart. And when he realizes that those people that he loves, his mother, his brother, and his father, have suffered, and that he then suffers, I think that's a real wake up of like, okay, got to switch things up here.
And I think that redemption's another thing that connects so many people to him, is the idea that like life is this purpose, this drive, but when things go wrong, it's getting back up, it's finding that. Otherwise, it is madness to just keep that day to day. We've also got one from Katie OB, which I wonder if that's an intentional name or if your name's actually OB. It's fitting for Loki. From Claremont, Florida, who asks, if you went to a convention and cosplayed as anyone but Loki, who would it be?
Yeah, my first thought was Spider-Man. I think I'm a little too tall for Spider-Man.
That's who's drawn him.
Yeah, that's true.
McFarlane,
Yeah, there you go, okay. I don't know why I thought that.
I've seen you in the Daredevil suit, but
Yes, I've got Daredevil. Charlie Cox and I have already done the switcheroo. So yeah, that will be fun.
that one's on hand, so it's... We've got Scarlett from Essery, Germany, saying, Dear Tom, do you have a special ritual or personal technique for setting into the character that you're going to play? By that, I mean right before the start of the scene or just before you enter stage?
I suppose I do, in that I try to feel as free and relaxed as possible. And then you kind of, I don't know, it's really interesting with each character and because obviously with each scene, you're preparing in a different way, the character's in a different emotional headspace. Sometimes they use music. Music is this extremely instinctive and evocative art form that can just put you somewhere in your imagination. But the main thing is to be ready, to be open and ready for anything that happens. That's always the most exciting thing. It's on stage or on screen, the unexpected, the spontaneous thing. It's like the way another actor feeds you the line, or when something goes wrong, it's often magical because it's something you didn't prepare for, but it's about being free and open.
Did you have that moment differently? Did you have that moment differently before certain scenes where you're at different timelines in season 2? Because rewatching it, it's fascinating to see your awareness and your knowledge of which you are interacting with which of them in the timeline. Did you have to prepare like, I'm me then, but not quite then?
Yeah, kind of. And also, I think there was an element of all the rest of the cast who were amazing. Sometimes not quite having, they didn't get the memo. So I would just be steaming ahead. They'd be like, Tom seems really wired today. Because he had like 7 pots of coffee.
You had to learn physics very quickly.
They had to learn physics very fast, yeah. But that was really fun because it felt like life imitating art in a way. There were some scenes where I had stuff happening and they were like, this is going much faster than I thought it was going to go.
That's so fitting, that's great.
It was cool.
Now, I
think actually Sophia in one scene improvised, Loki, why are you acting so weird?
Keep that, let's put it in.
Which may have been Sophia talking to me.
Now, in that same vein, this was full of immersive sets that were staggering. What was your favorite to work on, and did you take a proper set piece home to keep as a memento? From Lauren and Lila Hotchkiss from Port St. Lucie, Florida.
Great question. Kasra Farahani, our production designer, I salute you. These sets were absolutely extraordinary. And unique for me in terms of my experience with Marvel. Often when you're in space,
As you do.
Marvel can't unfortunately take us into space. So that's when you find yourself in front of a green screen or a blue screen. But these sets were just so precisely built and designed, and they were all extraordinary. I think I have a particular fondness for the temporal core control room, where some of the biggest emotional scenes take place. At the end of episode 4 and obviously the end of episode 6. It was on 3 levels. It felt like a spaceship. We were in there all the time. There were some funny scenes in there. There were some very emotional scenes in there. And the gangway leading out to the end of it, where the sort of at the end of the gangway, there's I can't remember technically what you call it, but some operating piece of machinery that a bit of temporal loom engineering, but that was all there. It was all built, and so all those scenes with Owen and Sophia and Key and Wumi and Eugene, we were up there all the time, and it felt like there was something out there. It felt like there was a temporal loom out there that was about to blow. It's pretty exciting.
That's so helpful.
Yeah.
The stakes feel more like it.
Yeah. And then actually there were these, because obviously, sorry to break the illusion, but there was not in fact a temporal loom. But outrage from the front row.
She's leaving.
She's gone. But there was an extraordinary rig of lights set up by Isaac Bauman, our DP, and it created, and sometimes the special effects team would be able to rattle the whole set. The shutters would rattle. It was unsettling. It felt like a bomb was going to go off.
Jim Starlin likes to set his stuff in space because he doesn't like to draw cars, and he invented Thanos. Is there something for you where it's like you prefer a certain type of set because there's a certain comfort in your body?
I think if you're in if you're in a real environment, it gives your imagination so much more. You literally have walls to bounce off, or in my case, there were tables and polished corridors and mosaics, and you're in elevators. It's very, very tangible for the whole crew. Actually, everyone can feel what the energy is. Sometimes when you're in a blue screen or a green screen environment, it's the imagination has to work harder. I love that too. I love that challenge. Sometimes when I was time slipping, I was on a blue screen. That was fun.
But so much imagination. I can't imagine thinking about time displacement in your body and acting it.
Yeah, the crew was so sweet. Every time I time slipped, we had to bring out the green screen, and I must have looked. On a Monday afternoon, and it's like, what is he doing?
Mentally and physically exhausting, that time slipping.
Yeah.
Rachel from Orlando, Florida, probably here, asks, I imagine that over time, as you embody the same character, you discover more and more about them every time you step into the role. After over a decade of playing Loki, what's been the most surprising or significant thing that you've learned about the character that you didn't know at the beginning of your journey?
That's an amazing question. Give me 1 second.
Just 15 years of processing. This is the time slipping up here that we don't get to see when acting.
I think actually the most surprising thing is that I've been allowed to explore his depth and his range for this long. is I really thought, like, I got cast in Thor. I was delighted. Kevin Feige says, you're also in Avengers. I was delighted. Thor: The Dark World, fantastic. I never expected to play the character for this long and to mine and excavate so much of his complexity and so many of the keys on the piano, as I like to say. And I think it's because of you guys. I think the fact that the audience...
I would love to go back and show on-set Thor, Tom Hiddleston, the final scene of The God of Stories and be like, you don't even know how he got here, man. There's a lot that's gonna happen.
Wait, why is he wearing a tie?
There's a lot of abstraction and linear filming that happened. Autumn from Sebring, Florida asks, this is maybe the most important question of the day, how do you prepare your hair to play Loki?
Well, how long have you got? So yeah, I dyed both seasons of Loki. I've used my own hair, I've grown it out, and I've dyed it. It's always a moment when the dye goes in. This is my natural hair color, by the way. We dye it, and it's quite strange. It is a transformation. That first day when it's dyed, brushing my teeth at the end of the day, I go, oh, there he is. You know, it's really interesting. But in terms of the daily prep, it's just like, you know, try and make it look less like a bird's nest and more like something smooth and Loki-like. You know, getting a hair chair, I think gets blow dried. You know.
It's gotten flipped more over the years as well, so I feel like it needs that.
Yeah.
The hair flip getting the shear is maybe my favorite surprise. Like, we're about that.
The hair flip's really interesting because when I'm Loki, that's the longest I've usually had my hair. And it's sometimes I think it's sort of, because he's in these jerky scenarios, where his body is being jerked around. So it's just sort of getting it out of his face, and then it's become this signature move.
It's kind of become like a dance move. Like there's this kind of like emotion to it.
Oh yeah, I feel it every time.
We've got one from Harper, North Carolina, saying, what 3 songs should everyone add to their favorite playlist right now?
Wow, good question. Rose Rouge by Saint-Germain. I'm listening to a lot. It's fantastic. It's kind of a jazz thing. Contact by Daft Punk.
Great song.
Fantastic. And goodness, put me on the spot here. I'm trying to pick an obscure one that maybe you haven't heard of. What's on it? What's on there? What's on there? What's on there? What's on there? Bear with me. No pressure.
The last one's always the hardest because you know every other song is excluded.
Yeah, everything else. Hang on, just pick one. I've drawn one.
More time slipping is happening inside Spotify Shuffle.
Teardrop by Womack and Womack. Okay.
I hope you took notes. I'm gonna ask you.
I'm sensing that, like, you've all heard of Daft Punk, but you know, Rose Rouge, Saint-Germain, and Teardrop by Womack and Womack. They're bangers.
I got stuff to Google after this. I'm excited. All right, now we're gonna play the game you guys played earlier here in just a moment. My last question. Yeah, I'm excited too. I got some curiosities. But my last question is, and this is selfish, I love Justin and Aaron, so I gotta know, this season felt so Shakespearean and at so many points like stage work. It felt like a beautifully choreographed stage play at so many points. With your decades of Shakespeare experience, how did their specific directing style being so Lovecraftian blend with your Shakespearean nature? What was that set dynamic like for you as an actor to use your tool with theirs?
Justin and Aaron are so fleet-footed and dynamic as filmmakers. They have amazing instincts for story, and I think they were just, what I was very moved by was how fast they understood how much this meant to me and how much it meant to all of us, and trying to construct a narrative that felt like the most fitting chapter to close on. It's got extraordinary momentum, propulsive energy going through the story, which really suits them. They love the fact that Loki's on the back foot all the time, and he constantly wants answers. We need to get the next bit, the next bit, the next bit. And it has quite a edgy procedural thriller element to it. We shot episode 1 first, and they had a director's cut like really quickly, and we all watched it, and it was so exciting because it just comes out of the gates sprinting, literally. Yeah. The first shot is Loki running and Mobius running, and
you don't really stop.
Yeah, we don't slow down. And they were so on board with that, and they were so quick and so, like I said, so dynamic. They've got really good instincts for what's the next thing that should happen. And we used to just say to each other, to remind each other, the best thing about story, it's really simple, is to remind yourself this has never happened before. And actually it invigorates everyone on the set with a sense of the stakes. Like, it's never happened before, and it matters what happens next. And it means that suddenly the stakes become very high and everyone gets very serious. And it means that any comedy actually comes out of the intensity of it. It's like it's no one's grasping at sort of laughter that feels shallow. It's often the laughter is from like intense disagreement or people. Yeah, exactly. People trying to improvise. And to pay tribute to them, at the very end of episode 6 of season 2, Justin and Aaron turned to me, and we were doing Loki walking up the steps, and with the timelines in his hands, and moving towards sitting in the chair and what that would mean. And very complex day in terms of filming. The camera was on a techno crane, and it was kind of moving around the stairs, and Justin and Aaron turned to me and said, I think we're going to be in here, which is the size of the shot. We're going to be really close on your face in about 30 minutes. How can we help you with where you need to be there, then? And I said, I don't know, it just makes me think of like the 15 years I've played this character. And Aaron said, why don't you go away? Like, cause the energy of the set was very practical. So just go and take a minute, and why don't you watch some of the scenes from the last 15 years? And, which was a brilliant note. It was so clever, because it made me think of, for me personally, me, Tom, it made me reflect on the friendships that I had made in this journey, the people I've met, the laughter we shared, the lessons I've learned personally. And by the time I came back in to shoot the scene, I was carrying all of those memories with me. And it felt very fresh and very resonant, and it all came from Justin and Aaron's suggestion to do that. And so that last shot is me thinking of all the people that I've shared this journey with, which is who he's talking about in the end when he says, for you, for all of us.
When you watched it, did you feel that anew, but from outside? Did Tom feel those memories that you felt to make that feeling again when you viewed you through the lens of the complete. I can't imagine directing that set, 'cause it's you and Loki, but the memories flashing through to get to that point for this, when you watch that shot, did that bring those same memories? And
Yes, yeah. It felt very open and very raw, that moment. And yeah, it was one of those unforgettable moments as an actor. I was alone. There were no other actors called that day, but I actually said something to the crew before we did it. I said, this is a very significant moment for me personally, and I really appreciate you all being here. And I know some of you have been here for a long time, on that journey, and some of you have been here for less time, but as we roll the cameras, be there with me. Let's do this together. And I felt very open, and it felt very simple, actually. Loki's done so much deceiving, and this moment felt extremely honest, and for that reason was really profound.
It's beautiful. And we felt that journey. We felt that experience. Beautiful. All right, you guys want to see the results of the game? You ready? All right, so I'm going to ask you, it's not a competition. We're just seeing your perspective and theirs, not versus. For you personally, home, Asgard, or Jotunheim?
Asgard.
They said, I'll never know. What do we got? I'm curious, do we know? The technology. I have no mouse in my hand. I'm curious what you guys said. I personally got Jotunheim too.
I'm hearing Asgard.
Let's go with that. All right, let's play it that way. I like this. Better hair. Thor or Loki?
Thor's hair is pretty great.
So you know your brothers.
Exactly.
Bigger nemesis, Hulk or Thanos?
Thanos. Nightmare.
Weapon, scepter or daggers?
Daggers.
Move. Like you've got like a video game.
I know. I did a quick story about that. I may have told this before, but we were on the set of Ragnarok in Australia, and it was a shot with myself and Idris Elba, and we both had a set amount of choreography to finish, because there was the big fight on the bridge against Hela and her army. And I had somehow finished mine earlier than Idris, and I realized I didn't want to stand there looking like a lemon. So I thought I'd better just keep going, and I flipped my daggers. I just did it there and then it became this thing.
It was in your body, and Idris is so cool. You're like, I gotta go.
Yeah. And then Idris said to me, I just said, what on earth was that? Trying to upstage me?
All right, this is hard. You can only save one. Mobius or Sylvie?
Impossible.
And I heard a split. I heard split decision. Perfect answer.
Yeah, it's a split vote.
I'm team everyone.
I couldn't possibly. Yeah. I agree. Exactly right.
I love how much we love these characters. It went from all that to just Loki. And final question, King of Asgard or King of all time?
King of Asgard.
For all time.
And with that, I want to thank you all for a wonderful time talking with Tom Hiddleston.